What it do, everyone? My name is Vern. Welcome back to the channel. So I've talked about this topic a few times in this past year, but that topic happens to be student loans. Being someone who has went to college, who has student loans and has been paying them for the last 6 years, I'm going to share some of my thoughts on some possible programs. I'm going to share what I'm going to be doing and provide some tips on what you can do to evaluate what you would do with student loans. A couple things to note before we get into the video. This video is on federal student loans only. Any private loans or credit card loans or any other loans that are through private lenders, that doesn't apply here, and I'm sorry for that. I will also do my best to avoid any political stance on this topic, even though it has been mentioned as a political topic, just so as long as you obliterate the like button. So if you've already done that, let's get into the video. Collectively, in the United States alone, there are over 45 million people with almost $1.6 trillion in student debt. Student loan forgiveness was a hot topic in the recent election race, and since we're fast approaching a new president-elect, barring any recounts, lawsuits, or any horoscopic star alignments, whatever can happen, anyone who has student loans is going to ask the question, should I pay off my student loans? If you don't recall, in March 2020, President Trump's executive order along with the CARES Act provided relief on many fronts, one of those being student loans, where student loan interest rates went to zero and all federally backed student loans were put into forbearance. That was originally supposed to be only until the end of October, but then it was later extended to the end of December, and now, like I just said, it's going to go until January 2021. With President-elect Joe Biden taking office in January, there is still no clear picture if the payment moratorium will extend even further from this and leaving millions in uncertainty. With the current economic climate, there are many people who will have to think about making payments again with the re-engaged interest rates. I got a little chilly, so I popped on this coat. Student loan relief is a little bit complex, but there is without a doubt that it would help a bunch of people. You have millions of people struggling to keep up with payments, but you also have people who have been able to continue making payments, as well as others who were able to pay off their loans properly. Since there are still a few weeks left until 2021, with no clear plan left, it is very important to prepare for what is next. Most likely there will not be anything new until late January because of Georgia's runoff election, which will determine who takes control of the Senate, as well as Biden's inauguration. With the recent extension on the 0% interest rates for federally backed student loans, here are a few possibilities of what can happen post-inauguration day. The first possibility is another extension on the already extended forbearance period. Like I said, this has already happened, but what will happen after January 2021? Since there is a transition period in 2021 in the month of January where inauguration day would happen, Trump's executive order could be extended if Biden chooses to do so. This would continue the interest-free moratorium on federally backed student loans, having no effect on private student loans, which was never the case this whole year. On top of the 0%, these loans would be put into forbearance, so no payments would be required, extended whenever they decide to do so. What this means is any payments made to these federally backed student loans with the 0% interest rate will go directly to the principal balance, making the money put towards it go a lot more further instead of if the interest rates were there. So by the time that interest rates do kick back in whenever that decision is made, the principal balance would be a lot lower versus otherwise. What I would expect from this is people who are taking advantage of this were either paying down their student loans or saving more money so that they're in a better financial position and taking advantage of that relief. So by the time interest rates and payments do kick back in, they'll be in a better spot. So if it was the case that the moratorium would get extended past January 2021, this is what I would do. If there does happen to be a chance that the moratorium wouldn't get extended, I would be prepared to make those payments ahead of time, having the money saved or having just ready to go in a bank account to make those payments. Get in touch with your loan servicer. Find out if your bank information is up to date. Make sure your payments will either be the same or different compared to what it was before March, and make sure that you have enough money to meet those payments if the extension doesn't happen. The second thing that can happen, and this has been talked about a lot, President-elect Biden would want to relieve an instant $10,000 from student loans. This has been tossed around campaigns for many Democratic candidates. However, from President-elect Biden specifically, he wants to push a $10,000 student loan forgiveness as part of his emergency action plan to boost the economy. Additionally to the relief plan, Biden also proposed a plan for education beyond high school, offering another $10,000 for undergraduate or graduate student debt relief for every year of national or community service up to a total of 5 years or $50,000. This isn't like picking up trash on the side of the highway, but more of working in schools, the government, or any nonprofit settings. Anyone currently in these jobs would be automatically enrolled, and anyone with 5 years prior experience would also be enrolled as well. Here's what I would do if Congress decides to pass the 10K student debt relief. First off, it is worth to note that something like this would have to be proposed in a bill. It would then have to go to the House and then the Senate, and then after that, if all approvals are done, would go to President-elect Biden's desk for him to sign. That basically means it could be weeks or even months if anything actually happens. I mean, think about the stimulus check, like a second round. Exactly, nothing has really happened. There are a few politicians out there like Chuck Schumer or Elizabeth Warren who want an amount higher than $10,000. I mean, $10,000 is a good amount in itself because in some parts of the country, that's a down payment on a house. You most likely won't see a check in the mail if you have student loans, but basically you would see any balance that you have with $10,000 less if this happens to pass. You have to think about this long term. It's not just going to be a $10,000 check in your bank account, it's just going to be your student loans are going to be a less amount on whatever they decide to do. The third and final option that's been tossed around is your monthly payments could be lower if payments do resume. The Biden plan for education beyond high school also revisits the current income-based repayment models. Here's what this could look like according to his plan. First, any individuals making $25,000 a year or less will not owe any payments on their undergraduate student loans, and those loans would not accrue any interest. Two, everyone else who makes up to $55,000 would only have to pay 5% of their discretionary income, which is basically their income minus their essential spending like their mortgage, their rent, and any food. After 20 years, any individual making payments for each and every month, each and every year for those 20 years will have their loans forgiven 100%. Three, any individuals with new or existing student loans will be automatically enrolled in the income-based program with the option to opt out. And four, Biden will also change the tax code so any debt forgiven through the income-based repayment plan won't be taxed. So this is what I would do if this were to occur. Biden's plan gives debtors a fresh start where their payments would be only 5% of their discretionary income instead of the current 10%. Similar to the last option of the $10,000, this plan would also have to go through Congress where a bill would have to be made, it'd have to go through the House, the Senate, and then go to President-elect Biden's desk for approval. Basically what I'm saying is don't hold your breath on this one. It could be weeks or months till this actually happens, especially with what is going on in the Senate right now because you have the House-controlled Democrats and the Senate is potentially going to be ruled Republican. There's going to be a lot of conversations about this. But consider some of these things if your monthly payments do happen to be lower. One, you could just continue making the same payments that you were before the lower payment happens. That way you pay off your loans faster. Or two, take the lower payment and that difference could be put towards bad debt with anything that's over 5%. Or if you don't already have an emergency fund, try to save 3 to 6 months of your monthly spending. Despite the current forbearance, I continued making the same payment amount before this all happened, so my principal balance is actually significantly lower than it was before. Bottom line, with the uncertainty in the near future, you cannot bank on any of these options happening, but you can be better prepared in the case that any of these things do happen. I mean, if you're watching this video and you search student loans on YouTube, that's probably how you came across this video, and you've probably come across many other videos talking about student loans. The thing is, student loans aren't the biggest topic compared to like Biden's tax plan, but that also doesn't mean that we should be left out in the dust. The fortunate thing for those with student loans is we were given a break, and this year being the wreck that it is, student loans should not be a worry, but it is for millions of people. Regardless, here's a prioritized list of things that you can do before student loans do kick back in. First, pay off that high interest debt of anywhere between 5% or more. Basically, all you have to do is minimize spending on credit as well as paying down your credit card debt. Two, build up an emergency fund. If you know how much you spend on essential spending per month, take that, multiply it by 3 to 6 months, and then have that saved away in a savings account. If anything happens, you'll have that in a place that's easily accessible, and you'll have 3 to 6 months to figure out what it is you're going to do next. And then you can start making maybe the minimum payment on your student loans or even more based on your preference. I say this after the first 2 points because basically doing those 2 things first before this will put you in a better financial position and give you more money in the future because since there is 0% interest on student loans right now, your money elsewhere would go a lot further. If all these things are good to go where you don't have any bad debt, you have an emergency fund, and you don't have any more student loans, take that and invest the rest. You definitely should look at this long term because if you happen to look at this year as an example, look at what happened back in March. The stock market dropped like almost 40%, and then now we're back at where we were before all this happened. If you happen to invest at the peak right before the drop back in March, if you held on to it until now, you'd be back to the same spot and a little bit more. What happened to me was my portfolio dropped by 40%, but I just continued to invest the same amount I do every month and then waited until now, and it's basically a lot more than it would have been if I sold and then tried to buy back in. These are all things that I'm personally doing, and I'm definitely in a better spot than I was at the beginning of this year with more money saved, invested, and a significantly lower principal amount on my student loans. So again, any of these possibilities may not even happen as quickly as you would like. There are so many topics that might take precedent over this and have a higher priority than student loan forgiveness, such as a second stimulus check. Based on some economical statistics, it might even be the case that a second stimulus check might be a better investment for the US economy. I saw this on an article as well as a YouTube video on Meet Kevin's channel. There's also another video that I watched from Andre Jick's channel where he talked about student loans as well. So you can check both of those videos out in the description. With that said, everyone, thanks so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already done so, please remember to obliterate the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you know the next time I post a video on my channel. Here's my Instagram handle. You can find me there. I post there from time to time, and we do have a lot of fun on there, so feel free to add me there. If you want to get started in investing, there's a few links in the description below where you could get a total of 5 free stocks. One is to Robinhood, one is to Webull. If you deposit $100 to Webull, you can get 4 free stocks where one of those stocks can be valued up to $1,600. Robinhood gives you 1 free stock. There's one link to Yada Bank. You could potentially win $10 million.
This sounds like a sales pitch, but there is one last thing I'd ask you to do, and that is to go to
millennial.investments, where you could sign up for a newsletter where me and a couple friends of mine are going to be launching a new website in the new year. So remember to check that out. With the knowledge that you gained in this video, let's get to work.